If I were given only one word to describe Tunisia, that word would be fragile. This is a country only 11 million strong. That's less than the population of Cairo. To attempt to insulate Tunisia from the chaos of the Maghreb is mission impossible. There is Algeria to the west and Libya to the east. Tunisia has land borders 1,400 kilometers long. Keeping Tunisia immune from the storm raging around it is not just a matter of geography. It's on its own in so many other ways. It is the only Arab country where Islamists who swept to power on the back of the Arab Spring and lost the confidence of voters lived to see another day. The only country where the ousted party makes way and continues to support its successor. The only country where the leader of the opposition talks to the president and supports him even when he declares a state of emergency. Tunisia contains all the toxins which poison the well of politics elsewhere: a deeply polarized electorate, an existential cleavage between the secular and Islamist, as reported here by Reuters, political assassinations, as shown by The Independent, an old order which refuses to give way, as Voice of America details, endemic youth unemployment, at crisis point according to Al Jazeera, a clientist economy which delivers little to anyone other than the corrupt and the extremely rich, something which open democracy calls the Tunisian transition's worst enemy. It is all this, but somehow everybody keeps on talking to each other. In June, a 25-year-old Tunisian stepped onto a tourist beach in Sousse, took a Kalashnikov he had hidden inside a beach umbrella, and proceeded for the next 47 minutes to shoot dead 38 tourists on their sun lounges. It made global headlines, from BBC to CNN to Al Arabi. Most of the victims were British. The shock was not that the IS had arrived in Tunisia. It was that it had taken them so long. Like the two gunmen who killed 21 people in an attack on foreign tourists in the Bardo National Museum in central Tunis, Saifuddin Rezgi got his weapons training in Libya, as the Daily Telegraph reports. Investigations into his background and motivation hit a brick wall. The Mail quoted his mother, Radia Manai, saying that her son could not kill a mouse. Rezgi had just got an MA in electronic network management, a course he interspersed with visits to Libya for weapons training. He was elated by the fall of Ben Ali, the dictator, but frustrated by what was to follow. The Independent quoted a classmate, Taha, in Kairouan. But then he began to get angry, bitter, more religious, Taha said. He began to talk about how the end of the dictator should have been followed by the establishment of a more pure society, upholding Islam. But he saw nothing improving. Things just got worse. So the man who played the cool dude talked about sport, mixed with people who drank, was someone in disguise. He put a mask on to keep himself hidden, Taha said. Rezgi is not the enigma he seemed. Taha's quotes chime with other reports. A friend from Tunisia told me about an exchange he had with a man selling cannabis in a dusty provincial town outside Tunis, where little seemed to have changed. The drug dealer bemoaned post-revolutionary Tunisia's loss of discipline. "But you're a drug dealer," my friend reminded him. "Yeah," came the reply, "and the IS would soon sort out riffraff like me." The Daily Mail said the IS recruits were being brainwashed. That's the easy explanation for a secular Western audience to digest. What's not being reported by the mainstream media is how attractive the arguments of the Islamic State are. Fadel Ashour is president of Tunisia's National Union of Imams. Even imams have a trade union in Tunisia. He was an imam at the historic Zitouna Mosque in Tunis before being forced out by a hardline preacher after the revolution. Ashour told the Middle East Eye, "These people aren't stupid or naive. Their arguments are good. They explain everything, the bad economy, the lack of social values, through the absence of religion in Tunisia. They tackle their worst fears. If they're looking for a job, if they lack faith, whatever, they'll use it. They'll present themselves in whatever light will best convince their potential recruit." For young men living in Darfur, Rezgi's hometown, and hundreds of other remote Tunisian towns, radical messages make sense of a lifetime of poverty and crime. The Islamic State offers order and theological certainty to the lost souls of the revolution. Evidence for this is not merely anecdotal. 3,000 Tunisians are now fighting in Iraq and Syria, IS's second largest contingent of foreign fighters after the Saudis. Tunisia's interior minister claims to have stopped over 4 times that number, 13,000, from going to the combat zones. The government's reaction to the Suez attack has been to close 80 unlicensed mosques and declare a 30-day state of emergency, as this BBC article shows. The mosque closure is a two-edged sword, which could easily be copied elsewhere, like France, to devastating effect for the Muslim community. It is also being opposed in Tunisia. Tunisia Daily quoted a former minister of religious affairs and imam of a mosque in Tunis as saying, "It's an exaggeration to say that terrorism goes hand in hand with the mosques." Worse, a crackdown on civil liberties could reopen the barely concealed wounds of the past 4 years. The state of emergency allows the authorities to bar strike action and public meetings deemed dangerous to the public order, and to increase controls on the media. Human Rights Watch warned that a state of emergency does not give the government the right to gut basic freedoms and rights. According to Al Arabiya, Kamal Jendoubi, the minister who heads a crisis group set up after the attack, said the state of emergency only raises the level of vigilance in the country. It has been put into practice, but it has never threatened freedom in Tunisia. Behind this debate lurks another: the suspicion that a government composed of and headed by old regime figures would quietly revert back to type. The Prime Minister Habib Essid has spoken about bringing back a system of informers, encouraging people to monitor their friends and neighbours, a real throwback to the days of Ben Ali. Education Minister Neji Yajoul said on TV after the Bardo Museum attack, "Terrorists don't respect human rights, so we shouldn't respect theirs." The attacks on tourists, Tunisia's prime industry, is a well-aimed blow to the state itself. Dealing with the odd fighter returning from Libya with a machine gun is one thing, but dealing with a stream of them getting across the border is quite another. The current government's knee-jerk response, focusing on repressive legislation and empowering the security forces, may remind some of their recent past. This is a dangerous path to tread. Firstly, despite the agreement of the first Islamist-led coalition to stand down and their subsequent defeat at the parliamentary elections, Tunisia still has a post-revolutionary order. To revert to a pre-revolutionary one would be a bad mistake. Secondly, the Nida Tunis president, Beji Said Essebsi, an 87-year-old who served under every regime since 1956, still has the support of Ennahda, or at least its top echelons, the Islamist party it ousted. Tensions will increase with the closure of mosques, a tactic some Ennahda members say will be counterproductive. Ennahda's support for the government is also coming under fire from 2 directions: the rank and file and secular opponents, who have revived their suspicions that Ennahda is secretly in hock to the militants. This evokes painful memories of 2 political assassinations, both of which were staged to force Ennahda from power. But in an effort to distance themselves from militants they had nothing to do with, Ennahda also went over the top when in power. Under public pressure, it banned Ansar al-Sharia, as this BBC article shows, which is distinct from Okba ibn Nafar, a small brigade of al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, which took responsibility for the Bardo attack. As Jonathan Steele wrote in the Middle East Eye, the effect of that was to swell the ranks of Tunisian Salafists joining the more extreme group. He wrote, "Unlike al-Qaeda, Ansar has no apocalyptic vision or strategy. Instead, it seeks an alternative to the disastrous social conditions of young Tunisians. It wins their support by claiming the government's growing emphasis on security amounts to a return to the ousted dictatorship, and says it is vital to build an Islamic front against the deep state. Ennahda's decision to ban Ansar has strengthened the Ansar case, while the ban's practical effect was the departure of hundreds of Salafi supporters of Ansar to go to Libya and Syria, where they joined the open war being conducted by the IS in those countries. Now the latest idea is to build a concrete wall and ditch 168 kilometers long between Tunisia and Libya, as International Business Times tells us. But as the website Intifada reports, the politics of the border are more complicated than that. 4 years on, Tunisia is still unique, but it is oh so vulnerable. Rather than Libya, the Tunisian government should concentrate on what is happening to its youth at home. They need jobs. They too need to gain from the revolution. They have yet to. While this situation exists, Tunisia will remain a recruiting ground for jihadis with simpler, absolutist answers.